Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wellness Chats with Nisha, Stigma-Free Society. I am Nisha Khare. I'm your host, and I am the co-founder of Human Biography. We document icons and changemakers around the world and capture their stories. A little bit different now. Now it's more local icons and changemakers. And I'm also the founder of a new movement called Women of Wonder. It's all about empowering women into their superpowers. And today I'm going to be interviewing Emilie Leneveu. And let's bring Emilie up.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking.
Great to have you here. And for everyone watching, I want to tell a little bit about Emilie. So Emilie's an entrepreneur, and she has a passion for equity, education, and the environment. That's a really cool combination.
Thank you.
She's studied in various fields like biotechnology to design thinking, project management, marketing, and really just giving her a real interesting and unique, perspective in these industries. So she's a graduate in 2018 from biotechnology, advanced biotechnologist, and valedictorian for Loyalist College. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words this morning. And a Bay of Quinte. Is it Quinte or Quinte?
Quinte, whatever, however you pronounce it best, but Quinte is the official term.
Great. So a Bay of Quinte and a Canadian Top 30 Under 30, which is super cool, and a member for the Center of Workforce Development Board, a youth advisor on the Educational Sectoral Committee of CCUNESCO, and an advocate for positive mental well-being, and a speaker through jack.org. So Emilie's currently working as an intrapreneur full-time with the small social company, A Social Enterprise. Okay, amazing. So what an amazing, fantastic bio, Emilie. I've talked a bit about you, but maybe you can tell a bit about, a little bit about yourself and kind of like what got you to where you are here today.
Absolutely. So I grew up in the area in the Bay of Quinte. I really appreciated having a kind of bilingual upbringing, if you will, having a francophone high school and then going into Loyalist College. So, of course, more of an anglophone setting, but still having a lot of connections with francophones in our area, and just really learning different perspectives from the community. It's interesting having gone to elementary school, I think 20 minutes away from my my post-secondary school, Loyalist, and just seeing all the differences that exist where we are. And I think that's when I started to also be interested in the mental health services and using them myself, and having peers that looked out for help as well, and just realizing where the gaps were. And that's where I think my advocacy started, which was really exciting.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's quite the journey. At what age did you start feeling, this desire to maybe be an advocate?
I think it's something that's always followed me, even in the secondary school setting, for sure. But I think what really kind of hit home was around second year of college, when I realized that there were perhaps a lot of gaps for particular individuals in the post-secondary setting. And I think that's when I realized that we needed more services, and there were services available, things like jack.org, for example, where you could start chapters across Canada. And it was reassuring to see that there were networks available. You just had to know where they were, if you will. So yeah, I would say second year of college was when it really started to spearhead the advocacy piece.
That's amazing. I feel even with with Stigma-Free Society, the different people, the variety of people that we have on, some of the benefits are that it just gives people knowledge that there are things out there. There are things out there, there are people out there for you, and things people might not have thought of. Maybe you could tell us about jack.org, because I am very interested, because you're a mental health advocate and speaker with Jack. So maybe tell us a bit about jack.org and what does it do?
Absolutely. So there is the speakers program that I'm really excited about, but maybe I'll dial it back to kind of where I got started, which was with the chapters program.
Okay.
So first and foremost, Jack.org is kind of a peer-to-peer based, but also, of course, based on science and facts and a lot of research and surveys that they do provincially and nationally. But at the end of the day, I like to think of it as very peer-to-peer based in that we're a network of speakers as well as a network of chapters that are all either in the secondary setting. I think we actually have a few elementary schools now on
Okay.
board, as well as lots of post-secondary chapters. So again, in my second year of college, I was looking for services within the post-secondary setting, and I realized that because there was such long wait lists at times to get services, there's just a need to kind of bridge the gap between what existed while you were waiting, if you will, and then getting actual help. And I say actual help between air quotes because I think social determinants of help are also very important, but in terms of professional help, of course, kind of bridging the gap there. And that's when I found Jack.org. So again, there's the chapters program. You can start a chapter at any school or even in your community. And then the talks program. So that's when over the course of the summer or the spring, you take a few months to learn how to discuss mental health in an appropriate way, mental health 101, and just really hone in on your speaker skills as well. And then you get paired up with different schools. Of course, again, looking very different now. It's going to be virtual talks and
Right.
not up on a stage, which will feel a little different not having that face-to-face interaction, or at least tangibly in real life. But yeah, so there's the chapter programs, the speaker programs, and then we also have the summit program. So those are bigger regional summits or get-togethers, conferences. Again, very different virtually now, but yeah, that's the long-winded spiel on Jack.org.
No, it sounds super interesting and positive. It's a great name.
Yeah.
So maybe you could tell us a bit about, like you're involved with mental health and being an advocate. Perhaps tell us a bit about your own personal experience with mental health.
Absolutely. So I think I remember when I was in high school, so this is, I think, 6 or 7 years now towards the end of my high school career, which is weird to think that it's on the upper end of the decade and not the lower end. But anyhow, I remember we had one particular day that was mental health day, and we were going to have all these speakers come in. And I think one of the school buses was canceled because of snow or something. And literally no one showed up. Like everyone was just like, oh, like one of the school buses were canceled. Like no one wants to come. But I think at the moment I didn't think anything of it, but then further along in post-secondary I realized that was such a good indicator of how people don't necessarily feel comfortable, or youth don't necessarily feel comfortable speaking to maybe a doctor or a professional or a psychologist doing a keynote speech when they're just looking for that peer support. And I think that's kind of why I was so pulled into Jack.org in my second year when I started to struggle. And in post-secondary my grades were starting to decline. I started not getting I was a volleyball player all throughout post-secondary and high school, and I wasn't even getting excited about volleyball practice anymore and things like that. And at the time I didn't realize that those were indicators that my mental health was declining. And luckily there were individuals in my community that did recognize those factors and were able to connect me to support, which at the time, being a I guess a first time advocate, if you will, I was a little bit not resentful, maybe a little bit, but I don't like to use that term, but definitely was pushing back on those individuals. But I'm so thankful that they did connect me to those supports. And then I did realize, there a lot of people feel this way, and you might not realize you're feeling as negative as you are until you kind of see, for lack of a better term, the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's when I was so pulled and I gravitated towards Jack, because I was looking for that peer support, and that's when my advocacy began. But yeah, I was lucky that I had people that were there for me.
And amazing that people recognized what was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be easy to just say like, oh, that person is just being like this, or I'm just gonna, pull away, or I don't know what their problem is. But instead, people stopped and said, look, like, I think something's going on, or have you thought about this? Have you noticed these symptoms and signs? Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I think first it was my volleyball coach, and then when I first was connected to support, I think that's when I had kind of a negative experience when I remember like when I was having, and I think a lot of people might be able to resonate with this, when I'm having a particularly bad mental health day, I will strive that extra mile to make myself look good. Like I'll make sure my hair's down, curled, like the whole 9 yards, eyeliner, which I will never try to normally do. But I just feel like it's unfortunate. But I think for a lot of people, having that extra mask of protection, if you will, by being your best self on a bad day is something that definitely helps me. So I remember I had gone to school that day after seeking help, or after someone connected to me to help, looking better than usual, we'll say. And I remember someone in a mentorship position said, "Oh, well, you look fine." And it was in that moment that I realized, okay, I know, and like I'm capable enough to realize that I'm not fine, but I look fine. But the fact that you're telling me I'm fine is not okay. Even if I wasn't really sure what was going on, I was able to resonate with this is not cool. Like you were not allowed to say that. So I think that's what really and I mean this individual, we now have a great relationship, and I think that's it wasn't the message that was trying to get across in the slightest. But I think there's a lot of instances like that where you need those peer supports, and you need to kind of lean on someone or something, or a network of people to say, hey, so this happened, we still need to do something for mental health, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very strong point that you're making also, that although we might present as fine, we may look like we have it all together, we may be smiling, but like you're saying, that can also be a mask. That can also be a mask as to like what's really behind what's happening. You know, like today I have a mask on. I have a million things that have happened in my day. I am trying to keep it together. I am emotional and overwhelmed. However, I'm going to present strong because we've learned that.
Yep.
We've socialized. But imagine if there's moments when you don't have to be strong and you can just be whatever you're feeling, and that if there are people there like peers who are there not to judge you, but just to say, hey, it's okay. I understand what you're going through. And so I'm really happy that you've created like a community around yourself, that you have that. And that Jack's provided some of that for you. So like, what does Jack do? Like, what are some of the cool things about them that
So
to you that have helped you?
yeah, like with the chapters, they really give you a lot of leniency. So any chapter can really do anything they want as long as they're promoting positive well-being. Like I think one chapter, I think it was shared in college, they ended up publishing the first ever magazine for mental health and well-being within colleges. And that's something that they took on as a chapter. They received funding from Jack, and they made a whole magazine on self-care. So that was really cool. But there are also a lot of there's a lot of smaller initiatives too that younger chapters are starting out, whether it be making stress balls together, or making some form of self-care kit, or something that's smaller but easy to do as groups. And that's the way that different chapters kind of get together and have various events, which I think is really cool. And then there's the bigger things like the summits and the talks, where we actually go through an hour-long presentation of, well, what is mental health and what is being there for others. And I think that one's the really important one. And they actually, Jack.org just recently released, I think a year ago now, BeThere.org, and it's all about how to be there not only for others but for ourselves. So, and it's which is so important, if not more important, really, right? Because again, cliche, but you can't fill from an empty cup, and I think that's something we hear a lot, but it's true.
I think it's very true. I think it's a big lesson I've learned in my so many years, especially now, especially amidst everything that's happening. We have to, it's important to, it's great to take care of self first, because then you can do good. You can reach others. But I think that sometimes we forget, or maybe, I don't know if it's that we're just not taught, or we're just taught to like take care of everyone else, but there's something there, right? Like, why is it that so many of us forget to take care of ourselves first?
Absolutely. And I think to your point, I think it is, in a way, it's not really taught to introduce self-care at a young age, and to take time, because when we are young and we have so much energy, we don't feel the need to stop. But then once you hit maybe post-secondary, or maybe even it's grade 5 or 6, something happens in your life and you're not really sure how to be there for yourself. it's not a natural thing, I don't think. So I think maybe it's an education piece more than anything.
It is. I think it's a education, building it into the systems, just building it into our societies,
Mhm.
right? That how are you feeling it matters? What are you doing for yourself? And it's not just suck it up, buttercup. You're fine. We've got things to do. That's not helping, right?
No,
And
absolutely.
and so you're super passionate about mental health. And what are, like, why is mental health so important in your line of work now as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think I've kind of transitioned out of the sciences and being more on the marketing side of things, especially with COVID. It's all almost all digital now when it
Yeah.
comes to my clients anyways, when it comes to our digital efforts or our marketing efforts, it's almost all digital. So I think it's that extra layer of need for advocacy from everyone who has any bit of knowledge of mental health. I think it's so important that we're getting it out there and that we're also being really truthful, that we can have candid conversations saying that we've had a bad morning or a bad week or even a bad month and putting that out there on social media, but then also realizing that we need to educate those around us to be ready to receive those messages. So it's such an awkward vicious cycle of put everything out there but don't overshare because you can't be responsible for someone else's response. But then of
Hmm.
course, when can we never really know what anyone else's response will be for anything in life. So it's an interesting cycle of trying to figure out that sweet spot of awareness, if you will, and allowing people into our lives and into that honesty without, or hopefully without triggering anything, if you will, in other people. So it's an interesting line to fall into when it comes to digital marketing. So I think for me, working in the space, it's important to not only educate our clients but also educating the followers of our clients on, it's okay to talk about mental health even if you're a, I don't know, a radio station or a construction company, for example. It's
Yeah.
fine to talk about bad days, or it's fine to post I'm off this Friday because I'm taking a break, right? And I think it's using different awareness pieces like that subtly within digital companies. But to be honest, I think we need to go further than that and figure out different ways that we can implement, again, at a systemic level, different things to ensure that people's mental health aren't declining by being on the social media so much. Like Instagram, for example, removing likes. Like now you can't you see
Yeah.
someone like this and others, for example, whereas you used to see 42 likes or 100 likes. So I mean, I think that's a good concrete example of something that they tried to do tangibly to fix their addictive nature, even if I think there's a lot of other things in place that kind of maybe make that less than overly effective. But at least that's one example of a company that at least tried to implement something, and hopefully it's helping some people feel a little bit less like they need to have 100 or 200 or how many amount of likes.
To kind of like take that pressure off, because what we
Yeah.
see is there is a lot of pressure in social media, right? It has a big impact. So it's very cool that you're talking to companies about it's okay to be honest about mental health too.
Mhm.
You just say like this is not happening right now because I couldn't do
Yep.
it. It was hard. So you currently work with a small social company. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so we are the small social, but we work with all different size companies. I know it kind of started out as a one-woman show, I believe, with our founder working with small companies looking to grow with them. But now we have a vast array of different clients from Toronto all the way to I think a few in Ottawa as well. So across the province here in Ontario. And we just work with companies to get their story out there. So we do everything from Google My Business assistance to running that, their analytics, running their social media as well, and just making sure that they can be their authentic selves on social media.
Wow. And so what kind of responses are you getting to this? This is like, it's just a great way of being because why do we need this? Why is it that people didn't automatically think they could just be themselves on social media?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question of why is social media the highlight reel to begin with? And I think it maybe didn't start that way. I know my first Instagram post, I think, was a pair of sneakers or something. And I think everyone who got Instagram in middle school probably posted a few different pairs of shoes before the selfies came in, if you will. But yeah, it's interesting how it very quickly evolved into, well, I can only show the perfect things or the best things, or again, the highlight of my life. So it's I think it's engaging in a way that still presents their best work, or perhaps the things they're most proud of, but doing that in an authentic way that shows the bumps along the road.
Yeah, that's very cool. And let's talk social enterprise. Maybe you could tell our viewers a bit about like what does social enterprise mean?
Yeah, so to me, it means a company or a business or even an individual, a personal brand that's looking to innovate and of course looking to profit, but to then give back, or then to ensure that systemically they are net positive, if you will, and not net negative, whether that be environmentally. So 10 Trees, for example, right? A profitable business that sells clothing, but then will plant trees for every pair purchased, right? Or a company that I work for, WeBS Community, we what we do is for every pair of socks purchased, we'll give back $3 to a local community shelter, or we'll give a pair of socks back. So through the one for one model that you might have heard of, which 10 Trees kind of takes tenfold. But yeah, so to me, again, a social enterprise is still a company that's looking to profit and accelerate and grow, but to then take that growth and ensure that it's giving back positively into their community and networks.
It's just such a beautiful way of existing, and it just makes sense that like as this spreads, that all companies would actually want to do this in some way, right?
Yeah, I think to me it's kind of shifting away from the idea of corporate responsibility, because again, something like social media that I think started for the greater good, if you will, but then with corporate responsibility, a lot of people kind of got turned off by that because they're saying, oh, like, I mean, I don't like to use any brand names because I don't want to negate anyone, but we'll say a soda company, for example. If a popular soda company is giving back $3 or 3 cents for every bottle purchased, and but are still, I don't know, affecting the environment, or say the number one CO2 producer,
Right.
then companies or individuals are going to say, okay, like this corporate responsibility thing, it's like, what is it? Like, thanks for giving back your 3 cents, but you're still the biggest polluter. So I think the idea with a social enterprise is recognizing that it's not just taking from one pool and giving to another, it's really incorporating into a system how you can ensure that you're improving that system without necessarily it being a give back. Sometimes like that one for one model works great, but other times it's more of systemically figuring out how to improve something.
And then since you've been part of this company and you've been like doing this work, have you seen other companies maybe say like, hey, I'd like to integrate more of this model into the work that I'm doing? Or like, are you seeing the impact?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to work with a variety of different social enterprises, and it's really great to see kind of one for one, exponentially one person will kind of grab on and send an email and say, "Hey, like I'd love to incorporate this into my network." And then you'll see 3 or 5 people from that person's network. And again, exponentially, you'll see it kind of cluster out. So it is really interesting working with various social enterprises across the nation I've been lucky enough to work with, and kind of see the different clusters of it populating throughout their networks, which again is even easier to see digitally now, which is fantastic, and at least a little bit of an added bonus, if I may, to the negativity of COVID. But
Exactly.
yeah.
It is actually amazing to see the good that has come out of technology in connecting people and helping people and just creating a global connection in many ways too. Maybe you can tell us a bit about like your role with the small social company.
Yeah, so I'm currently kind of heading the creative side of things, so more into content creation. So just figuring out ways how to visually create stories for various clients, and figuring out ways of creating different cohesive content for their Instagram profiles, for example, as well as LinkedIn, Google My Business, and anything that you could think of online.
Oh, that's amazing. How did you get involved with them?
It's a really interesting kind of path that I always have to kind of really think of how I got here because I feel like from science to marketing, it was
Yeah.
a lot of loops. But I think I first got interested in marketing when I worked in the cannabis space, which was really interesting when cannabis was first legalized by Canada in 2018. That's kind of when I deviated from the sciences a little bit, kind of working more on the regulation side of the sciences. And then that's when I sort of segued into marketing. And then when COVID-19 hit, I was still freelancing at the time. So I had a few different clients, less at that point in the cannabis space and more on the social enterprise front. And then I was lucky enough to get connected with the small social through a mutual friend, and I interviewed and liked the cohesive unit and the smallness, if you will, of the team. And yeah, I was lucky enough to join the team in August, I think, or earlier than that, June, I think. Yeah, June of this year.
Amazing. Because you're, well versed in this area, I'm going to ask you, what should people be aware of or think of maybe when it comes to social media, how it does have an impact on our mental health? What are some things that you've heard or learned along the way that maybe could help people in awareness of like how it might impact our mental health in a negative way or how to ensure that it impacts us more in a positive way?
I think the first thing that I realized, or the first thing that I did back in March with COVID, it was the first time that I actually took a social media break. Like I think I'd done it for like a few hours. I would post on Twitter, "Okay, everyone, like sorry we don't answer you," and that would be like 2 p.m. say, and then at 8 p.m. I'd be scrolling Twitter, and then someone would call. Literally, people would call me out on it. They'd be like, "Hey, I thought you were off Twitter. You just liked my tweet." So
Like I was off for 6 hours. Okay, that's a long
exactly.
time.
Exactly. But I think with COVID, it was the first time that I actually said, you know what, like I'm turning my phone off. I'll answer some emails if it's just my work account, maybe, but for like at least 24, if not 48 hours, if you can. Like, obviously, let your friends, family members, everyone know that you're off. And maybe, like, if you don't have a landline, maybe turn it on, not airplane mode, but Wi Fi off and data off so you can still accept calls. But I think it's really important to just go off of social media for a day if you can. And if you don't work in marketing, it might be a little easier. I'm definitely finding it harder now, trying to stay off of my personal but on my clients. But yeah, I think the first thing that I learned is just taking those breaks. And it's totally fine to say, you know what, this weekend, I'm just going to do something, whether it be in nature or whether it just be in your room and not on social media, I think is so important. And the other thing I would say too is a lot of people oftentimes say, oh, like if you don't like something, you don't have to follow it. And I think that is really important that, if someone or an account isn't making you feel great about yourself, you can unfollow it. But I also want to recognize that sometimes that can be really hard, or maybe sometimes it could be your best friend's account that unfortunately, because they might be doing better or worse than you are at any given time, like that might be something that's hard for you, right? And you're not going to necessarily want to unfollow that person because it's going to create some awkward conversations. So I think on that note, you don't necessarily have to unfollow or turn social media off, but you can turn your notifications off. And you can do that in a really strategic way. I think one of the things that's really great about social media is now you can literally turn off for specific accounts. You can mute specific conversations for 4, 8, 12 hours or indefinitely. So I think it's really important to be yeah, just to be very cautious of what we're notifying ourselves with and what we're also creating barriers for. So I would say you don't necessarily have to unfollow everyone, but you can turn off their notifications. Would
That's a
be a
really
good
good point.
takeaway.
That's very smart.
Thank you.
And that way you're not creating any drama, but
Yeah,
like you're there, but you don't need to see everything. So very good point.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, and
Or
so,
even by app, like you can turn Snapchat off, but keep Facebook on, right? That
yeah,
could help.
that would be a great one too. Like you can even take breaks from certain ones, so you're not like opening your phone and like scroll. Okay, Facebook, Instagram, so
Yeah,
Snapchat, like just
yeah.
maybe take a break from one.
Try to just do LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Maybe the safest.
that could be cool. Maybe you tell us, Emily, a bit about your plans or goals for the future here.
Yes, so I was very privileged and humbled to have been acclaimed, I think, 2 Sundays now, ago for the Ontario Liberal Party here in the Bay of Quinte riding. So I think in actually a lot of conversations, thank you. I think in a lot of conversations I've had, a lot of people have asked me why are you running, and the answer that I've often come to, and my genuine response is my advocacy kind of plateaued, and I think I was at the point where I was having conversations with government officials about some of the mental health gaps that I saw or things that we saw in our community, and I was not getting any resistance by any means, but just feeling like, okay, I need a seat at the table. I want to have these conversations, and also just to represent youth in our marginalized communities. So for myself, I'm in line to hopefully be in Queen's Park shortly and continue the advocacy pieces that I've had the privilege of working on in my community.
That's amazing. That's amazing
Thank
to
you.
take your advocacy to the next level and just keep growing it. And so for like other viewers that maybe, you know, are watching and they're passionate about a cause, but they don't know where to start, any advice for them before we wrap up here?
Yes, that's a great question. I think the first thing that's really important to do is to hold your elected officials accountable. And the easiest thing you could do is start at the municipal level. Talk to, if you're in a smaller town, maybe have a conversation with a city councilor, email them or call them directly. Oftentimes they're happy to have those conversations with citizens. And if you see a gap in your services, hold them accountable and have those conversations. And maybe a step before that is also just talking to various committees and getting on board that way, and having your seat at the table. So I would say never shy away from holding elected officials accountable. And if that kind of feels like a second step to you, then go to the institutions, go to the mental health organizations that are available and ask them what the gaps they see are, and then kind of play the middleman, if you will. And I think that's a great way to start as an advocate.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Emilie, for being here today. It's great
Thanks
to
for
see
having
your
me.
passion. Yeah. And that you're like, so, you know, this intelligence combined with the zest and the passion. And I feel you're going to do big things.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah. So thanks for being here on Wellness Chats with Nisha, and everyone. We'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in, and everyone have an amazing day. Take care.
Yeah.
Take those social media breaks.
Yeah. Self-care day.
Self-care day. Okay. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.